The council chamber was huge. 47 different alien species sat in their seats arranged in a perfect circle. Each species had their own spot, decorated with symbols from their homeworlds. Humans had a small section near the back. It had always been that way. Kate Morrison stood at the human podium. She was tired. After 30 years of talking, arguing, and begging, she was finally tired of it all. Her hair had turned gray during her time as Earth's ambassador. The alien said it was because humans aged too fast. Kate knew it was because dealing with the council was exhausting. Today was voting day. The council was deciding on something called the Limitation Accords. Kate already knew how the vote would go. She had spent weeks trying to convince other delegates to vote against it. They all said the same thing. They were sorry, but they had to think about their own people first. The Limitation Accords were simple. Humans could not expand their colonies beyond 10 systems. Humans could not build more than 50 military ships. Humans had to share all their technology with the council for free. Humans had to follow special rules that nobody else had to follow. Prime Counselor Zethrak called for the vote. He was a Thoraxian, tall and covered in blue scales that shimmered under the chamber lights. He looked at Kate with something that might have been pity. Or maybe it was contempt. Kate could never tell with Thoraxians. The voting display lit up. One by one, the species voted. Green meant yes. Red meant no. The display filled with green lights. Kate watched her friend Zethon, a crystalline being who looked like living glass, press the green button. Even her only real friend had voted against humanity. 46 green lights. One red light from humanity. The accords had passed. Zethrak smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. He began reading the official statement. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too young to be trusted with full freedom. These limitations were for the good of the galaxy. For peace and stability, Kate had heard it all before. 200 years of the same words. Humans were always too something, too emotional, too violent, too quick to change. The council loved to remind humans that they were the newest members, the youngest species, the ones who needed to be controlled. She remembered her first day in this chamber 3 decades ago. She had been excited then. Humanity was part of something bigger. They would learn from older, wiser civilizations. They would take their place among the stars. That excitement had died slowly. Every proposal humans made was rejected. Every request for colony rights was denied. Every attempt to trade fairly was met with demands for free human labor and technology. The council took and gave nothing back except restrictions. Kate thought about the human doctors working in council hospitals. They made up almost 1/3 of all medical staff. They worked longer hours than other species and got paid less. When they asked for fair wages, the council said humans should be grateful for the opportunity to serve. She thought about the human engineers who kept old systems running on dozens of worlds. They fixed problems nobody else could solve. They invented new solutions to old issues, and the council called it required technology sharing under treaty obligations. She thought about the human soldiers who died protecting council borders from pirates and raiders. They fought bravely and asked for nothing except respect. Instead, the council said they were too violent and needed to be controlled. Zethrak finished reading the statement. He looked at Kate and said she could respond if she wished. His tone suggested he expected her to accept the decision quietly, like humans always did. Kate walked to the center podium. The chamber was silent. Every species watched her with their various eyes, sensors, and perception organs. She took a deep breath. She began speaking. Her voice was calm and clear. She reminded the council of the first human ship that arrived 200 years ago. The captain had come in peace, offering friendship. The council had welcomed them, but with conditions. Always conditions. She listed every treaty humans had signed, every agreement they had honored, every restriction they had followed. She talked about the colony applications that were rejected for no reason. She mentioned the technology that humans had shared freely, only to see other species profit from it while humans remained poor. She spoke about the time humans saved the Viridian system from an asteroid collision. Human engineers worked for months without rest. They succeeded. The council thanked them by denying their request to establish a research station in that system. She talked about the plague that hit Nexus Station 5 years ago. Human doctors found the cure. They worked day and night, saving thousands of lives from dozens of species. The council's response was to demand humans share all their medical research for free. Kate's voice grew stronger. She asked the council a simple question. What had humanity ever done to deserve this treatment? They had never started a war. They had never broken a treaty. They had contributed more to the council than most species twice their age. Zethrak interrupted her. He said she was being emotional. Humans always let their feelings cloud their judgment. This was exactly why they needed guidance and restrictions. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from other delegates. Something inside Kate broke. Not with anger, but with clarity. She realized that nothing she said would matter. The council would never see humans as equals. They would always find reasons to keep humanity down. Kate stopped speaking. The chamber fell silent, waiting for her to continue her emotional outburst as they expected. Instead, she smiled. It was not a warm smile. She thanked the council for a valuable lesson. They had taught humanity something important about the nature of alliances. They had shown humans the difference between partnership and exploitation. They had made it very clear where humanity stood in the galactic order. Then Kate said the words that would change everything. She announced that humanity was formally withdrawing from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, all human personnel would return to human space. All human assets would be removed from Council territory. All agreements and treaties were hereby void. The chamber exploded with noise. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Zethrak tried to speak, but his words were lost in the chaos. Zathon's crystalline body flashed with colors that meant distress. Other delegates looked confused, angry, or shocked. No species had ever left the council before. The idea was unthinkable. The council was supposed to be the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Species joined and stayed forever. That was how it worked. Kate did not wait for a response. She walked away from the podium with her head high. Her small delegation followed her. They left the council chamber while delegates were still shouting questions and demands. Outside the chamber, Kate allowed herself a moment of emotion. Her hands shook slightly. Her assistant, a young woman named Beth Harrison, looked worried. She asked if Kate was sure about this decision. Kate nodded. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. Humanity had spent 200 years trying to earn respect that would never come. It was time to stop begging for acceptance and start demanding dignity. She sent a coded message to Earth. 3 simple words. Begin the withdrawal. Within minutes, the message reached every human in council space. The plan they had prepared in secret was now active. Kate looked back at the council building one last time. It was beautiful, built from materials gathered from 100 worlds. Humans had helped construct parts of it. They had maintained it. They had respected it. Now they were leaving it behind. Let the council find someone else to do the work they had always taken for granted. Let them learn what it meant to lose something they never appreciated. As Kate's ship left Viridian Prime, she thought about the future. Humanity would face challenges. They would be alone for a while, but they would be free. Free to grow, to build, to become whatever they wanted without council restrictions. The council had made their choice. Now they would live with the consequences, and Kate suspected those consequences would be more severe than they could imagine. Captain Lucas Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship. The communication from Earth had arrived 10 minutes ago. 3 words that he had been waiting months to hear. Begin the withdrawal. Lucas looked at his crew. They were ready. Everyone knew this day might come. They had prepared for it quietly, carefully, while pretending to be the obedient junior partners the council expected. He gave the orders. All human ships were to return to their home bases immediately. All personnel stationed on council worlds were to pack their belongings and report to transport ships. Everything valuable came with them. Everything else was to be left clean and organized. The operation moved like clockwork. Human soldiers at joint military bases packed their equipment within hours. They said polite goodbyes to alien colleagues who looked confused and worried. Nobody explained what was happening. Orders were orders. On Nexus Station, a massive trading hub, human workers began leaving their posts. The station manager, a Thoraxian named Velkon, rushed to the human residential section. He found families packing boxes and loading them onto transport shuttles. Velkon asked what was happening. A human engineer named Carl Peterson stopped packing long enough to answer. Humanity was leaving the council. All humans were going home. Velkon protested. They could not just leave. There were contracts and agreements. Carl shrugged. The council had made their decision with the limitation accords. Humanity had made theirs. He went back to packing. Velcon stood there watching 30 human families prepare to depart. They represented nearly half the station's maintenance crew. In the medical district of the station, Dr. Sarah Kim was saying goodbye to her patients. Many were long-term cases that she had been treating for months. Some were crying. A young Viridian child asked if she was coming back. Sarah shook her head gently. She wished them all good health. The head of the medical facility tried to stop her. They were in the middle of a critical treatment cycle. People would die without her expertise. Sarah felt bad about that, but she had her orders. She suggested they contact the council for replacement doctors. Surely the council had qualified medical personnel available. The facility had realized the problem immediately. Most species did not want to work in the medical field. It was considered low-status work. Humans had filled those positions because they cared about helping people, not status. Now those humans were leaving. Across council space, the same scene repeated. Human teachers left schools. Human mechanics abandoned repair bays. Human farmers walked away from agricultural projects. Human scientists packed up their research and went home. Within 48 hours, every human embassy in council space was empty. The buildings were clean and organized. Keys were left with local authorities. Notes explained where everything was stored. It was all very professional and very final. Lucas Grant supervised the military withdrawal personally. Human defense fleets pulled back from joint patrol routes. Shared military bases were evacuated. Weapon systems were packed up. Everything humans had contributed to council defense was removed. A council admiral tried to stop them. He said humans had obligations. Treaties required them to maintain their posts. Lucas looked at him calmly. Those treaties were made with council members. Humanity was no longer a member. Therefore, the treaties no longer applied. The admiral threatened to use force. Lucas smiled, but his eyes were cold. He suggested the admiral think very carefully before threatening a fleet that was no longer restricted by council military regulations. The admiral went pale and backed down. On Viridian Prime, Zathon tried desperately to contact Kate Morrison. They had been friends for years. Surely there was a way to fix this. Kate's response came through official channels. It was polite but distant. Humanity's decision was final. Zathon should not take it personally. But Zathon did take it personally. They had voted for the limitation accords. They had abandoned their friend when it mattered. Now they were losing not just humanity, but their own integrity. The guilt felt like acid eating through their crystalline body. Zethrak called an emergency council session. The chamber was in chaos. Delegates shouted questions. Nobody had answers. This had never happened before. There were no procedures for dealing with a species leaving the council. Some delegates suggested sending warships to force humans back. Others pointed out that humans had always been restricted from building a full military. Without those restrictions, nobody knew what weapons humanity might have. Starting a war seemed unwise. Economic advisors began delivering reports. The numbers were frightening. Humans made up significant percentages of workers in dozens of critical industries. Medical care, 30%. Technical maintenance, 40%. Agricultural specialists, 25%. The list went on and on. One advisor asked a simple question. Who would replace these workers? The chamber fell silent. Most species considered these jobs beneath them. That was why humans had done them. Humans worked hard without complaining. They had been convenient. Dr. Maya Rodriguez was the last human to leave Council Research Facility Gamma 7. She personally oversaw the deletion of all human research data from the facility computers. A Thoraxian scientist protested. That research belonged to the Council. Technology sharing agreements required humans to leave it behind. Maya pulled out a data pad and showed him the fine print. Technology sharing agreements applied to Council members. Humanity was no longer a member. Therefore, human research was proprietary information. She smiled and wished him luck replicating their work. The Thoraxian realized what this meant. Decades of research were gone. Projects that depended on human contributions would fail. Breakthroughs that humans had achieved would need to be rediscovered from scratch. He sat down heavily, watching Maya walk away. Communication networks across council space began experiencing problems. Human engineers had maintained the quantum relay stations that made faster-than-light communication possible. Without regular maintenance, The relays started breaking down. Messages took longer to transmit. Some sectors lost contact entirely. Council technicians tried to fix the problems, but they did not understand the human modifications that had made the system more efficient. Every fix seemed to create new problems. On Theraxia Prime, Zethrak received reports from his homeworld. The agricultural projects were failing. Crops that humans had engineered specifically for Theraxian soil were dying. Nobody knew why. The human scientists who understood the biology had left. Food prices began rising. Zethrak had always taken food security for granted. His world produced more than enough for its population. Except it did not really. Humans had been quietly supplementing production for decades, and now they were gone. Trade routes that humans had protected became dangerous. Pirate attacks increased immediately. Without human security forces, merchant ships were easy targets. Some shipping companies stopped operating entirely. Others raised their prices to cover the increased risk. Lucas Grant watched the final transport ship dock at Earth's orbital station. Every human in Council space was now accounted for. Nobody had been left behind. The operation had been flawless. His second-in-command, Commander Janet Cole, asked if he felt bad about leaving the Council in such a difficult position. Lucas thought about it for a moment. Then he remembered every time the Council had dismissed human concerns, every time they had demanded more while giving nothing. He told Janet that he felt nothing at all. The Council had made their choice. They had decided humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too young. Now they would learn what it meant to lose the people they had always taken for granted. Kate Morrison stood in her new office on Earth. She received daily reports about conditions in Council space. Infrastructure failing, communications breaking down, medical facilities overwhelmed, food shortages beginning. She felt a moment of sympathy. Then she remembered Zethrak's smug smile when the limitation accords passed. She remembered 200 years of being treated as inferior. She remembered every time humanity had asked for respect and received contempt. The Council had wanted humans to be quiet and obedient. They had wanted humanity to accept its place as a servant species. Well, humans had been quiet. They had departed without violence or drama. Now the Council could enjoy the silence and bear the consequences of their decisions. Kate turned off her datapad and looked out at Earth below. Humanity had work to do. They needed to build their own future now, free from Council restrictions. It would be challenging, but at least they would face those challenges with dignity intact. 3 months had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The cracks that appeared immediately after their departure had become chasms. Systems were failing everywhere. On Nexus Station, Velcon faced a crisis he could not solve. The main power generator had stopped working. Before the humans left, a simple maintenance call would have fixed it. Now, nobody on the station knew how to repair the quantum core that humans had installed 5 years ago. Velcon pulled up the maintenance records. Human engineer Carl Peterson had serviced this generator monthly. The logs showed detailed notes about every adjustment and calibration. But the notes might as well have been written in an alien language. Nobody understood them. The station switched to backup power, but backups were not meant to run indefinitely. Velcon calculated that they had maybe 2 weeks before systems started shutting down. He sent urgent requests to the Council for replacement engineers. The responses were not encouraging. Every station in Council space had the same problem. Thousands of engineering positions needed to be filled. The Council scrambled to find qualified workers. They discovered that most species did not train their people for technical work. It was considered boring and low status. Humans had done it because they found it interesting. In the medical district, the situation was even worse. Dr. Sarah Kim had left behind detailed patient files and treatment protocols. But without doctors who understood human medical techniques, patients were dying. A plague outbreak on the mining colony of Dust 7 killed 3,000 people. Before humans left, the colony had 5 human doctors who specialized in treating industrial diseases. Now it had none. The Council sent 2 Theraxian doctors, but they did not know the treatments that humans had developed. On Theraxia Prime, food riots erupted in the capital city. Zethrak watched from his office as angry citizens destroyed government buildings. They were hungry. The crops that should have fed billions were rotting in the fields. Zethrak had sent his best agricultural scientists to study the problem. They reported that the hybrid crops needed specific nutrients at specific times. The timing was critical. Too early or too late, and the plants died. Human farmers had known this instinctively. Thraxian farmers did not. Emergency food shipments from other worlds helped, but only temporarily. Those worlds had their own problems. Across the council, agricultural production was dropping. Humans had been involved in farming projects on dozens of planets. Now those projects were failing. The communication networks continued to deteriorate. Quantum relays failed faster than technicians could repair them. Some repairs made things worse. One technician on Relay Station Gamma 9 tried to fix a malfunctioning unit and accidentally destroyed 3 others. Entire sectors of council space went dark for days or weeks. Trade became difficult when ships could not communicate. Governments lost contact with remote colonies. Emergency services could not coordinate responses to disasters. The economic damage mounted daily. Trade volume had dropped by 40%. Shipping costs had tripled. Insurance companies refused to cover routes that humans used to protect. Some companies went bankrupt. Others laid off workers. The council chamber became a place of constant arguments. Species blamed each other for the crisis. The Viridians accused the Thraxians of causing the problem by supporting the limitation accords. The Thraxians blamed others for not opposing humanity's departure. Zathon tried to moderate, but their influence had weakened. Everyone knew they had been friends with the human ambassador. Some delegates whispered that Zathon was a human sympathizer. The accusation hurt more than Zathon wanted to admit. During one heated session, a delegate from the scattered tribe spoke up. They were a nomadic species that had always been treated poorly by the council. The delegate said something that made everyone uncomfortable. Maybe the council deserved this crisis. Maybe they should have treated humans better. Zethrak shouted the delegate down. The council had done nothing wrong. Humans were too sensitive, too quick to take offense. This whole situation was humanity's fault for overreacting to reasonable restrictions. But Zethrak's words rang hollow. Even he did not really believe them anymore. Late at night, alone in his office, he reviewed the footage of Kate Morrison's final speech. He watched her list every contribution humanity had made, every time the council had dismissed them. He paused the video on her face when he had interrupted her. He had called her emotional, accused her of letting feelings cloud her judgment. Looking at the recording now, he saw something different. She had not been emotional. She had been done. The military situation grew more dangerous. The Krell Dominion, an aggressive empire beyond council borders, had always been held back by joint defense forces. Human tactical expertise had been crucial in planning defensive strategies. With humans gone, the Krell became bolder. They launched probing attacks on border systems. Council forces tried to respond, but their coordination was terrible. Different species had different military doctrines. Humans had been the bridge that made them work together. The Krell captured a small border colony called Haven's Rest. It was the first time in a century that council territory had been taken by force. The message was clear. Without human military expertise, the council was vulnerable. Council military commanders panicked. They sent urgent requests to Earth, offering enormous payments for human military advisors. The response from Earth was brief and professional. Humanity appreciated the offer but would decline at this time. They wished the council success in their defensive efforts. The message included a subtle reminder. Perhaps the council should refer to the limitation accords for guidance on military matters. After all, those accords had specified how many ships humans could build and what weapons they could develop. Surely the council's wisdom would serve them well now. The sarcasm was gentle but unmistakable. Some council members got angry. Others felt ashamed. Everyone understood the implication. The council had restricted human military development because they feared it. Now they needed that military expertise and could not have it. Zathon made another attempt to contact Kate Morrison. This time they did not use official channels. They sent a personal message to Kate's private communication line, one that she had given Zathon years ago when they became friends. Kate responded. The conversation was short and painful. Zathon apologized for voting for the limitation accords. They admitted they had been a coward, putting political pressure ahead of friendship. They begged Kate to reconsider humanity's withdrawal. Kate's response was kind but firm. She forgave Zathon personally. She understood the difficult position they had been in. But humanity's decision was final. 200 years of being treated as inferior was enough. Humans would not return to the Council. Zathon asked if there was anything the Council could do to change humanity's mind. Kate was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that Zathon would never forget. The Council could learn. They could grow. They could become better. But that growth would have to happen without humanity. After the conversation ended, Zathon sat in darkness for hours. Their crystalline body flickered with colors that meant deep sadness. They had lost more than a political ally. They had lost a friend, and they had nobody to blame but themselves. On Earth, Kate looked at the reports flowing in from Council space. Infrastructure collapsing, food shortages spreading, medical crises multiplying, military defeats mounting. The Council was suffering. Some of her advisors suggested offering limited assistance. Humanitarian aid for the medical crisis, perhaps, or selling food to worlds facing starvation. Kate considered it carefully and decided against it. Helping now would only teach the Council that they could abuse humanity and still receive aid when convenient. The lesson needed to be complete. The Council needed to understand fully what they had lost. Only then might they learn to value others properly. Kate sent a message to all human citizens. It explained the situation in Council space and why humanity would not intervene. Some people disagreed. They felt bad for innocent civilians suffering because of their leaders' mistakes. Kate understood their feelings. But she also remembered every human who had died protecting Council borders. Every human scientist whose research had been stolen. Every human worker who had been paid less for doing more. Compassion was important, but so was self-respect. Humanity had departed quietly, without violence or threats. Now the Council would bear the consequences of taking human contributions for granted. It was a harsh lesson, but sometimes harsh lessons were the only ones that stuck. While the Council struggled with crisis after crisis, humanity was quietly transforming. Free from Council restrictions, they could finally show what they were truly capable of. Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood in a research facility that did not officially exist. For decades, she had been working on projects that the Council deemed too dangerous, faster-than-light drives that exceeded anything the Council had, weapon systems based on physics that other species barely understood, artificial intelligence that could think and create. The Council had forbidden most of this research. They said humans were too young, too reckless, too unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology. So humans had learned to be very good at keeping secrets. Maya activated a holographic display showing the new faster-than-light drive. It was 3 generations ahead of Council technology. Ships using this drive could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. The Council had always controlled faster-than-light technology carefully, keeping everyone dependent on their infrastructure. Not anymore. Humanity had surpassed them. Captain Lucas Grant walked through the shipyards orbiting Mars. Row after row of warships stretched into the distance. Some were newly built, others were older vessels that had been upgraded with hidden military systems. The Council had limited humanity to 50 military ships. They had assumed humans would obey that limitation. What they did not know was that humans had built hundreds of civilian vessels with modular designs. Those civilian components could be swapped for military ones in hours. Lucas smiled as he watched construction crews work. The human fleet was now larger than most Council members realized. More importantly, it was more advanced. Human engineers had been designing better weapons and defenses for years, just waiting for the chance to build them. But humanity did not plan to remain isolated. Kate Morrison had always known that Earth alone could not stand against the entire galaxy if things went badly. They needed allies. Real allies, not the false partnership the Council had offered. The first species to approach humanity was called the Verdant Collective. They were plant-based beings, slow-moving but incredibly intelligent. The Council had classified them as non-sentient and denied them representation. It was one of the Council's many shameful decisions. Human scientists had proven verdant intelligence years ago, but the Council ignored the evidence. The Verdants communicated through complex chemical signals that most species could not detect. Humans had developed technology to translate these signals, giving the Verdants a voice for the first time. Kate met with Verdant representatives on a colony world called New Gardens. The Verdants moved slowly, their root systems anchored in special soil containers. Through the translation devices, they spoke with wisdom accumulated over thousands of years. They thanked humanity for recognizing their intelligence. They offered friendship and alliance. In return, they asked only for continued respect and the technology that allowed them to communicate. Kate agreed immediately. This was the kind of partnership she had always wanted. Other species followed. The scattered tribes, nomadic miners who had been exploited by the Council for cheap labor, sought refuge among human colonies. They brought their expertise in mining and metallurgy. Humans offered them fair wages and equal treatment. The Silent Watchers arrived next. They were observers, a species that perceived reality through scent and chemical gradients. Most council members could not even tell when Silent Watchers were present. Humans built devices that could translate their unique language, and suddenly the Silent Watchers had allies who could understand them. Within a year of leaving the council, humanity had formed a new alliance. They called it the Free Worlds Coalition. The charter was simple. All member species were equal. All contributed according to their abilities. All shared in the benefits. Nobody was considered superior or inferior. The council watched this development with growing concern. Species were leaving council space to join the coalition, not just individuals but entire colonies. The appeal was obvious. The coalition treated everyone fairly. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Krell Dominion, emboldened by their easy victories against council forces, launched a major offensive. They invaded 3 border systems simultaneously. Council defenders tried to resist but were overwhelmed. The Krell had always feared human tactical abilities. When humans left the council, the Krell saw an opportunity. They calculated that without humans, the council was weak. They were right. Council military commanders sent desperate messages to Earth. They offered huge payments, technology exchanges, trade agreements. Anything if humans would help defend against the Krell. Kate discussed it with the coalition leadership. The council deserved to face the consequences of their actions. But innocent people were dying. Civilians who had nothing to do with the limitation accords were being killed in Krell attacks. The coalition debated for hours. Finally, Kate made a decision. The coalition would intervene, but not to help the council. They would intervene to protect innocent lives, and they would do it in a way that sent a very clear message about what humanity had become. Lucas Grant led the coalition fleet to the Krell front lines. They did not announce their arrival. They did not coordinate with council forces. They simply appeared in the middle of the largest Krell invasion fleet and began fighting. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in generations. Coalition ships moved with impossible precision. Their weapons struck with devastating accuracy. Their shields absorbed damage that should have destroyed them. Lucas watched from the bridge as his tactical displays showed the Krell fleet falling apart. The enemy had expected an easy victory. Instead, they faced technology and tactics they could not counter. Human innovation, freed from council restrictions, was terrifying. The Verdant Collective contributed biological weapons that targeted Krell ship systems without harming crews. The scattered tribes used mining charges adapted into devastating missiles. The Silent Watchers provided intelligence gathered through senses the Krell could not detect. It was not just human power. It was the power of genuine cooperation between species who respected each other. The Council had never achieved this level of coordination because they had never treated their members as equals. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Krell invasion force was completely destroyed. Not a single coalition ship was lost. Council observers watched in stunned silence. Lucas sent a message to both the Krell Dominion and the Galactic Council. The message was brief and professional. The Free Worlds Coalition did not seek war with anyone. However, they would defend innocent lives when necessary. Today's battle should be considered a demonstration of coalition capabilities. The coalition fleet departed immediately, leaving council forces to secure the liberated territory. They did not ask for thanks or payment. They did not demand concessions or treaties. They simply left. The message was crystal clear. Humanity was no longer a junior partner begging for respect. They were a major power that operated on their own terms. The council could neither control them nor ignore them. On Viridian Prime, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates called for immediate negotiations with the coalition. Others insisted the council should build their own advanced weapons to match human technology. A few suggested declaring war on humanity for interfering in council affairs. Zethrak watched the arguing delegates and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. The council had always been the dominant power in the galaxy. Other species feared them. Now the council feared humanity. Worse than fear was the realization of what the council had done. They had restricted humanity precisely because they feared human potential. Now freed from those restrictions, humanity had become exactly what the Council feared. Powerful, independent, and completely beyond Council control. Zathon approached Zethrak after the session ended. They asked quietly if Zethrak finally understood what they had lost. Zethrak nodded slowly. They had not just lost a member species. They had created a rival that surpassed them in every meaningful way. Kate Morrison reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. The demonstration had achieved its purpose. The galaxy now understood that humanity and their allies were a force to be respected. More importantly, species suffering under Council rule now had an alternative. Applications to join the Free Worlds Coalition increased dramatically. Small species that had been ignored or exploited by the Council saw hope for the first time. The Coalition carefully evaluated each application, accepting only those who genuinely believed in equal partnership. Humanity had not sought power or dominance. They had only wanted respect and fair treatment. When the Council refused to provide those basic rights, humans had walked away. Now they were building something better. Something that proved there was a different way to organize galactic civilization. The Council's time of unchallenged authority was over. Humanity had departed quietly, and in doing so had changed the galaxy forever. 5 months after the demonstration against the Krell, Zethrak made a journey he never thought he would make. His personal ship traveled to Earth, a world he had never visited despite 2 centuries of humanity being in the Council. The trip was humiliating. As Prime Counselor, he should have demanded that humans come to him. But the Council was desperate. Food shortages had spread to a dozen worlds. Infrastructure continued to fail. The Krell threat had only been postponed, not eliminated. And more species were leaving to join the Coalition every week. Earth's orbital control directed his ship to a landing pad outside the human capital. There were no grand ceremonies, no diplomatic reception, just a simple message that Ambassador Morrison would meet him at the appointed time. Zethrak expected to be taken to an impressive building, something that would show human power and wealth. Instead, he was led to a modest government office. The room was small and plain. Kate Morrison sat behind a simple desk reviewing reports on a data pad. She looked up when he entered and gestured to a chair. Zethrak sat feeling uncomfortable. In the Council chamber, everything was designed to impress and intimidate. This room had none of that. The message was subtle but clear. Humanity did not need to impress anyone anymore. Zethrak began his prepared speech. He acknowledged that the Council had made mistakes. They had not fully appreciated human contributions. Perhaps the limitation accords had been too harsh. He hoped that humanity would reconsider their departure and return to the Council. Kate listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Zethrak's scales go cold. She reminded him of her final speech before the Council. She had warned them that the limitation accords would have consequences. The Council had chosen not to listen. Now those consequences were real. The Council's economy was damaged. Their military was weak. Their political unity was broken. And the species they had dismissed as too young and too dangerous had become the most powerful force in the galaxy. Zethrak tried to argue. He said the Council had always acted in good faith. They had been trying to maintain galactic stability. Surely Kate understood that difficult decisions had to be made for the greater good. Kate's expression hardened. She asked him a direct question. Had treating humans as inferior really been necessary for stability? Or had it simply been convenient? Had restricting human technology really been about safety? Or had the Council been afraid of competition? Zethrak had no good answer. Deep down he knew the truth. The Council had kept humanity down because it was easier than treating them as equals. Other species might have demanded better treatment if humans received it. The whole hierarchical system would have been threatened. Kate presented him with a proposal. The Free Worlds Coalition would provide humanitarian assistance to Council worlds facing crisis. They would share some technology, though not their most advanced systems. They would maintain peaceful relations and open trade. In return, the Council must formally acknowledge their mistreatment of humanity. They must apologize publicly. They must repeal the limitation accords and all similar discriminatory laws, and they must commit to treating all species equally in the future. Zethrak asked if humanity would rejoin the Council under these terms. Kate shook her head. That chapter was closed. Humanity would never return to the Council. The Coalition and the Council would exist as separate entities, cooperating when beneficial but remaining independent. Zethrak felt his world crumbling. The Council had defined galactic order for thousands of years. Now humanity was saying that order was broken and would not be restored. A new system would emerge, one where the Council was no longer supreme. He had no choice but to accept. His people were starving. His civilization was failing. Pride meant nothing against those realities. He agreed to all the terms. As he prepared to leave, Kate offered one final observation. The Council would recover from this crisis. They would learn and grow, but they would never forget what it cost to take humanity for granted. That lesson, she said, was worth all the pain they were experiencing. Zethrak returned to Viridian Prime and presented the terms to the Council. The debate was fierce. Some delegates called the terms humiliating. Others pointed out that they had no alternatives. Eventually, the Council voted to accept. The formal apology was broadcast across the galaxy. Zethrak himself delivered it, his voice heavy with shame. He admitted that the Council had treated humanity unfairly. He acknowledged their contributions and the mistake of driving them away. He promised that the Council would do better. True to their word, the Coalition provided assistance. Human agricultural experts helped restore food production on Theraxia Prime and other worlds. Human engineers fixed critical infrastructure. Human doctors treated plague victims and taught others their medical techniques. But this time, humans were paid fairly for their work. They were treated as consultants and partners, not servants. The Council learned what it meant to have an equal relationship with humanity. Years passed. The galaxy settled into a new balance. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority was greatly reduced. Many species had left to join the Free Worlds Coalition. Those that remained in the Council did so by choice, not because there were no alternatives. Kate Morrison eventually retired from active diplomacy. She had spent enough years fighting for humanity's rights. Now she served as an advisor to the Coalition Council, helping guide younger diplomats. She took great satisfaction in watching the Coalition grow. Species that would never have had a voice in the old Council now participated equally in decisions. The Verdant Collective contributed their ancient wisdom. The scattered tribes shared their technical expertise. The Silent Watchers provided unique perspectives that enriched every discussion. Captain Lucas Grant continued leading Coalition defense forces. The Krell Dominion, badly shaken by their defeat, had entered peace negotiations. Other potential threats observed Coalition military capabilities and chose diplomacy over conflict. Lucas sometimes thought about the Council military officers who had dismissed human tactical abilities. They had called humans too aggressive, too willing to fight. Now those same officers studied human military doctrine and tried to copy it. The irony was not lost on him. Dr. Maya Rodriguez headed the Coalition Research Division. Scientists from dozens of species worked together on projects that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. The free exchange of ideas produced innovations that neither humans nor any other species could have achieved alone. Maya remembered the Council research facilities where human ideas had been dismissed or stolen. The Coalition operated differently. Every species contributed according to their abilities. Every species shared in the benefits. Credit was given where it was due. Zathon eventually resigned from the Council and emigrated to Coalition space. They found Kate one day and apologized again for voting for the limitation accords. Kate forgave them, understanding the impossible position they had been in. Zathon became an important figure in the Coalition, using their experience to help other species transition from Council membership. They dedicated the rest of their life to building the equal partnership that should have existed from the beginning. 5 years after humanity's departure, Kate stood on the observation deck of Coalition Station Prime. She watched ships from dozens of species dock and depart. Trade flourished. Research advanced. Military cooperation ran smoothly. Everything worked because it was built on respect and equality. A young human officer approached and asked Kate a question. Did she ever regret the confrontation with the Council? All the pain and struggle that followed? Kate thought carefully before answering. She explained that sometimes the only way to gain respect was to walk away from those who would never give it freely. Humanity had shown the Council the consequences of their choices. The lesson had been harsh but necessary. More importantly, humanity had built something better. The Coalition proved that galactic civilization could be organized around cooperation between equals. Other species saw this and wanted to be part of it. The young officer thanked her and returned to duty. Kate remained at the observation window, watching the peaceful activity of the station. Ships arriving, ships departing, species working together. It was everything she had dreamed of during those long, frustrating years in the Council. Humanity had not sought power or dominance. They had only wanted dignity and fair treatment. When the Council refused to provide those basic rights, humans had made a difficult choice. They had departed quietly, leaving the Council to face the consequences of their actions. Those consequences had been severe. But they had also been educational. The Council learned what it meant to lose people they had always taken for granted. They learned that treating others as inferior had real costs. And they learned that human patience, while extensive, was not infinite. The galaxy was different now. Better in many ways. 2 major powers existed instead of 1. Species had choices about which system to join, and everywhere the message was clear. Respect had to be earned through equal treatment, not demanded through superior force. Kate turned away from the window and headed to a meeting with coalition representatives. There was always more work to do, more species to welcome,